I came to Longboat Key many, many years ago, 1951, and to visit friends of mine who had a restaurant on Longboat Key called the Peppermint Stick.
Oh, yeah.
John and Mildred Ashcraft. And one day, while visiting with them and driving back towards Sarasota, I passed the trailer park. And I thought, having never been in the trailer park before, I thought I'd go in and see what it was all about. I did so. I also had a dual purpose. I wanted to pick up some stamps, and the post office, I was told, was in the trailer park.
Now, did we get your name? I'm sorry, did we get...
Oh, no, we didn't.
Okay.
We didn't. You want me to give that now?
Sure,
Okay.
that would be good.
These are my reflections. My name is Al Jantzen, and I've been on Longboat Key on and off for 60 years now. In the trailer park, and then I lived up at the north end here. I rented some property from Cecil Schofield for a number of years. And these again are my reflections of the early days, my early days here on Longboat Key. I mentioned I went into the little post office. I think Mr. Williams was the postmaster at that time, but he wasn't there, and there were two women in there. One of the women was Gladys Weber, who she told me that was her name, but she wanted to be called Dutch Weber.
Yeah.
And that was Nelson Weber's wife, and he was one of the three owners of the park. The other one being Tommy Juergens, and Tommy Juergens' father-in-law, Lou Garman, were the three original owners of the park. And that they opened the park in 1948. They bought it in 47, but they didn't open until 48. And they put the three roads in, the North Road, the Main Street, and the South Road. And they built, the first building they built was a building that's now being used as a real estate office out in front. But that was a general store. And it was one of only two general stores on the Key at that time, the other one being up here on Broadway. And in back of the general store was their office, the park office. And I remember walking around. I asked if it was permissible for me to walk around the park, and I said, yes, it is. And they said, yes, it was. And I noticed a couple of men digging a big hole, and I went over and I asked them what they were doing, and they said they were putting septic tanks in. And that was a very tricky job on Longboat Key back in those days, because if you didn't anchor them properly at high tide, they'd float and break the connections, and then you had all kinds of problems. While I was talking to them, a Jeep pulled up. A man got out and came over to me, and we shook hands, and he told me his name was Tom Juergens. He was one of the owners. And that was really the beginning of a long, long friendship. Tommy and I knew each other for many, many, many years. And I asked him to tell me a little bit about the park, and he said that this park, they were trying to get people who would come there to eventually retire there. That was their aim. Not stay just a month or 2 months or for the winter season. Yeah. They wanted people to retire there. And they had a lot to offer. They had the beach and swimming and sun tanning. They built a T-head dock out into the bay, a fishing pier. It was about 150, 180 feet long, something like that people could fish off of. And but the thing that he was most proud of is they had private baths. The only trailer park, I guess one of only two on the west coast of Florida, that had private baths. Wow. And that was the big selling point, and that's what they were pushing. And most of the people that they had there then were from the Midwest, Ohio, Michigan, but mostly Indiana, as I remember. And at the time, he had 125 rental lots about half were taken, and most of the people were permanent, which became very important a few years later, because when they wanted to build the public beach on the key here, they wanted to build it right in front of the two trailer parks, and the only way that they could stop it was to incorporate, and I think at that time we had less than 150 permanent residents on Longboat Key.
Yeah.
Just compare that with what, the 6,000 or 7,000 we have today.
Right.
But anyway, at least half of the votes for incorporation came from the two trailer parks. And that put it over the top.
Wow.
We were allowed to incorporate, elected
Yeah.
a mayor
Yeah.
and a board, and got stopped, of course, the beach from going in. But more importantly, I think it was a couple of years later, when Mr. Davis came along, and he liked what he saw on Longboat Key, and of course he invested through a Vita Corporation, millions and millions of dollars. I don't remember how many, but I think it was in excess of $50 million he invested on Longboat Key. And he mentioned in several talks that he would not have invested as heavily as he did if we were not incorporated. So that was very important that we became.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also very instrumental in getting the bridge built on the northern end here. Because we got the lip, John and Mildred used to tell me, the state always says they're going to do it, they're going to build it, and nothing ever happened until Mr. Davis got
Now,
involved.
that's Arthur Bonnie Davis?
Yeah, oh yeah.
From Alcoa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he was a partner with the man who would eventually be, not eventually, was at the time, I guess, Secretary of Treasury for out of Pittsburgh. He owned Pittsburgh Glass, Pittsburgh Paint Company. What the heck?
It wasn't a Mellon, was it?
Mellon, Andrew Mellon.
Yeah.
Andrew Mellon, yeah.
Yeah.
And he had lots and lots of money, and he fortunately invested it here, and I think we owe an awful lot to him, because
Yeah.
this beautiful paradise that we've all
Yeah.
grown to love here would look vastly different today
Yeah.
if it wasn't for Mr.
You're
Davis.
You might just look one island north.
Yeah, that's
To
right,
see.
for a comparison,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he went up to Tallahassee and he talked to them up there, and all of a sudden, the building of that bridge became the #1 public works project in the state of Florida.
That bridge was the last one built by Manatee in the state. They passed a bond issue of $19 million to build the new Anna Maria, the new Cortez, the Longboat, and also the one over the Braden River.
Oh,
And so that was all tied in there. As you say, Davis was very influential, and I'm sure he had a lot to do.
yeah. Then Tommy told me that, see, our lots in our park were very small. And trailers were getting bigger and bigger. And he was losing business because people had bigger trailers and our lots couldn't accommodate them.
Right.
Well, at the time, they were doing some dredging on the intercoastal, and also they were dredging out some man-made canals just north of Bayport, which Bayport is just
Yeah.
north of us. So Doug Ray, who owned the Twin Shores next door, was on the board, I guess, at the time. And I guess he was Public Works Commissioner, but I'm not sure of that. Anyway, to get the permits for dumping, they had to go through him. So he said, hey, look no further. You guys are looking for a place to dump the spoils. Dump it on the end of my property. And they did. And they filled the back end of his property in, and they made he had to make a horseshoe-shaped marina. Well, then he was after Tommy and Webb to fill the end of our property, or their
Sure.
property at the time. A little self-serving, because if they filled in, the two would abut, and he wouldn't have to build a seawall on the south side. See? So finally, Webb said, hey, this is a good deal. We need more room anyway. And then we can make bigger lots and we can take bigger trailers. So he had them fill what we call the Gold Coast in, which is north of the marina. And then about a year and a half later, they decided to fill the south side in. And by that time, the dredging company had moved on. Their job was over. So they had to hire a dredging company to come in, dredge our marina out, put the spoils on the south side, and then they had to bring additional fill in to complete the job. Now we were faced with a long seawall on the south side. And they were very friendly with the property owner just south of us because for years we had been leasing a strip of land from him for parking and for boat trailers, and they had barbecue pits over there and everything else. And originally he said, okay, he said, I'll fill my property in too. And then he changed his mind. And this annoyed Webb a little bit. And he never did fill it in. We had to build this 500-foot seawall.
Wow.
The owners did. And then a couple of years later, he sold the property to the people who built Buttonwoods Cove. And when the property was sold, of course, we couldn't park there anymore. We couldn't use it as parking. And it's a problem that we're living with in our park to this day. We don't have enough parking. But by filling in the two pieces of property, we picked up, I think, 46 or 48 more lots.
Wow.
And they were bigger lots than we had, and we got bigger trailers. We were able to come in. We also got a very nice marina out of it.
Sure.
But it was a costly proposition. And, but it worked out well. The thing that they should have done in hindsight is they should have purchased that strip of land that was offered to us, and we didn't buy it. But you win some, you lose some.
Were you retired all this time?
No. I worked for Texaco for years and years, and I would come down here whenever I could on vacation time. My parents bought into the park in '58, and I didn't buy in until '62, actually, and bought a unit across the way from them. At the time, I wasn't married, and one of the park rules was that you had to be married. The operative word was big. They would rent the couples. The operative word was married. They had to be married. You could have pets, but they had to be in a certain part of the park, over on the south side on 5th Street, and you couldn't have children under the age of 14.
Well, that's a good idea.
Oh, great idea, yeah.
Do you think we can show some of the pictures? Can we
Sure.
get into that? And then, I mean, we can continue talking, but
Yeah.
what I'd like to do is I'm just going to pause for a minute.
Okay.
So we're on that general picture. Now,
Yeah.
what is that general picture there?
It's a picture of events at the park. What it is, in principle, it's a picture of one of the owners, Tom Jurgens.
Okay. So I'm going to zoom in on him. You want to say anything about him, or he was just a friend of yours?
He was the man that really guided our park, one of the founding fathers, and what we have there today, he was most responsible for, and we bought the park from him in 1992.
It's the man with the white hat on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to back out, and I'm going to pause for a second, and we'll get another picture, okay?
All righty.
Okay.
This is just a